All right, today I've got some thoughts on the Estée Lauder Legacy Collection. For those who don't know, this is a collection that was curated by Frederic Malle of some of the classic Estée Lauder fragrances that he worked with a perfumer on each one to rework them and relaunch them in a new bottle and a new higher kind of niche or private label price point. I will say, as you might know my taste, they don't lean vintage, and I've never smelled any of the original versions of any of these, at least knowingly. Maybe my mother or some women in my past had worn these and I didn't know, but I'm going purely just off of how these smell without the context of the originals. I'm very interested to hear how people who know the originals feel about these. But I can't speak to that, so I can purely speak just as these fragrances, how they stand on their own. First, I'll say, in case I make a mistake, I'm really bad with these names because I keep wanting to call it the Private Collection, but Private Collection is one of the fragrances, and then it's Estée Lauder, but there's a fragrance called Estée. I find them super confusing, so I'll try not to make any slips of the tongue. The concept, I think, is interesting, and I think it's in line with what Frederic Malle does. He's always branded himself as an editor, and so here he's editing like a curator brings together works of art. They don't make the works of art, but they bring them together to exhibit. And he kind of does his Frederic Malle thing, which is to really refine things. I feel like he has a very high standard of the way things smell and the way things wear on skin as well that he brings to this. And he worked with some really great perfumers, Carlos Benayin, Bruno Jovanovic, and Filippo, to reimagine these scents. A lot of people, I think, who are big fans of the originals are really upset about this. I think the biggest negative I can say, of course, is the repricing. Taking something that was good but affordable and then zhuzhing it up into this fancy high-end collection. That is pretty annoying, and of course, that's more and more the way things are going. I think it would be more acceptable, of course, if they kept the originals in production, but it seems like that's not the case. To me, I take a broader picture. It's possible that those others would have been discontinued completely, so maybe this is the only chance we get to have them continue. And I actually like how other brands like Chanel gradually through the years tend to tweak their fragrances so that they stay modern and of the time, and so that they stay in good condition. So in concept, I don't think there's anything wrong with kind of updating these, bringing them not just back to their former glory, but bringing them into the present. So I've worn all these. I had this little over a month. I've tried them all on blotter, and I've also tried to give each of them a wear on skin, but I'll go through each again here together. The first one, and I'll say the most striking to me right away, is Azuré. What's striking to me about this is it's a good representative of what I call like a big, spicy, mossy, vintage perfume. Thinking like Mitsuko, but it smells modern. It smells believable for today. I get a really nice bergamot opening, very herbaceous. Right away I get the oak moss. There's a mossiness. It lists leather, cumin, cardamom, sandalwood. Yeah, it reminds me of some of the few classic fragrances I do own, like Eau d'Hermès, but much thicker. Eau d'Hermès on steroids. I would say it reminds of Mitsuko. Again, it might just be due to lack of familiarity of the genre, that if I only know a few from the genre, then it's going to remind me of those few. Whereas someone really well-versed in vintages might have a more specific comparison. But what I like is it really feels like it's in high definition. I don't know if I'm just buying into the marketing copy too much. I don't think so, but I think that all of these, they really smell very, very defined. The notes smell very bright and very clear and very quality. There's no kind of murkiness or not dustiness, but kind of, dank vintaginess. So the style is vintage, but it smells modern. It's like if someone made maybe a vintage style of suit, like a 1920s suit, but using modern, precise manufacturing techniques. So when I wore this on skin though, it was really a cumin balm. The cumin really came out on my skin a little bit too much for me. But I will say it was quite loud for several hours, but then it dried down to something much more approachable and kind of cozy. But I think if you really love mossy, spicy fragrances, this is really a must try, I think. Of course, if you have a huge vintage collection, you may not find a need for this, but I think it's really well done. It smells really high quality. And for me, the appeal would be that I usually don't like this kind of fragrance, so I don't really have anything like this in my collection. So the appeal would be have a representative of the big mossy chypre in my collection that I can still get along with. So next up, it's also hard to read these samples. Estée, just Estée. All right, so the one named Estée. I'll spray it. All right, so this, it's kind of like we have a representative of a lot of the classic genres. This is what I would call the big French soap fragrance. So other things in this genre would be, of course, like Chanel number 22, what is it? Santa Maria Novella. I think Melograno is their kind of big soapy fragrance. So yeah, right away, kind of powdery, soapy, smells a little irisy or violety. It lists, let's see here, ylang, carnation, jasmine, musk, rose, honey. It's not overly sweet. I do get a bit of the ylang, the kind of waxiness. For the woman who makes champagne bubble, there we go. The champagne bubble is like number 22 or number 5. Again, it feels just so clear. I really like the clarity of all of these. All the notes, while not necessarily distinctly legible, they feel just very like precise. Yeah, I can't get away from this word precise because I think that's the best word to say it. I do get more of the ylang now that I read that. I get kind of a little bit of just that suntan lotion floral, a little bit yellow floral. Not a whole lot else to say. Again, it dries down on skin, giving just that nice, elegant, soft kind of French finely milled soap type smell. But we'll keep moving on. That one was, well, actually Fragrantica lists all 3 perfumers for all these, but I think that's not correct. I think this was, yeah, I'm not sure which one in particular worked on this one because Fragrantica is listing all 3 for each of them. The one I do know for sure, because of the smell, here's Private Collection. Yeah, this smells like Anne Filippo's Synthetic Jungle, and others have mentioned that. So this is the green one. So we've got the spicy mossy, we've got the French soapy floral, and then this is the big green one. It lists basil, galbanum, tarragon, jasmine, oak moss, rose, musk. I'll say to my nose, it's really quite similar from Synthetic Jungle. So this is Private Collection. The main difference I would say is Synthetic Jungle is even more modern. It's a little bit more sharp. It's got even more of that sharp like black currant note than this. This lists rose. I would say that gives it a little bit of like a round floralcy, but it really smells like a lot of the same materials used in the Synthetic Jungle Green Accord. I think if you like Synthetic Jungle and almost like would like it so much you wouldn't mind a flanker, you might try this. Or if you like Synthetic Jungle but find it a little too, almost too synthetic or too harsh, then you might like this. From memory, this dried down again a bit softer. Synthetic Jungle has kind of that almost undetectable patchouli, but I get kind of a woody hum in the base just a little bit that I don't get here. It's more of that floral mossy dry down. But again, really nice. I like Synthetic Jungle, so I like this. I'd almost say this is more wearable, maybe slightly more mass appealing than Synthetic Jungle. But it's not green in the Chanel way at all. It's not ashy, cold galbanum green. It's more like verdant, like it has the bitterness, not of galbanum, but of like broken green twigs, like a green twig that's kind of broken. It's got that freshness, that bright, almost like watery green. Yeah, but really lovely. And continuing on to Knowing. This one is what I wore today, or this afternoon. This, I believe, is the Rose. Let's have a look to be sure. Yes, Woody Rose. And yeah, right away, a nice rose, a spicy rose, flanked by some kind of amber and spices. It lists amber, orris, patchouli, raspberry. I can get that. Blackcurrant, rose, sandalwood, vetiver. Actually, I'm enjoying this on paper, interestingly, more than I did on skin today. I'm getting more of that raspberry. Maybe just the top notes had died off on my skin, and now the opening is really nice. There's like a juiciness to this rose, but what I found on skin is it goes very spicy in that sort of vintage way. I felt like I was detecting cumin, which is not listed. It could just be some mixture of other spices, but it had a little bit of that same kind of animalic, green, mossy, cuminy base as Azure, but not nearly. Yeah, when I smell them side by side, this is much more obviously cumin forward, whereas I would just call this like a spicy green sort of vintage rose smell. So that was Knowing. And finally, this is the one I haven't worn on skin. I've heard some people who really have been traumatized by experiencing this in their past life or knowing someone who wore this. This is White Linen. I don't hate the smell on paper, but I like to smell the blotters several days in and see how they develop. This one, after a few days, the late dry down kind of smelled like bleach to me. So I didn't end up trying this on skin. And yeah, it's a sharp, soapy, fresh, clean, musky smell, but there's something really, really astringent and harsh to it that almost reads like chlorine or bleach. So the notes say aldehydic, musky, jasmine, rose, vetiver, labdanum, and cedarwood. As it calms down, it's interesting. I think for a soapy fragrance, I was just reviewing the new Frederic Malle. This is a little bit like that, but even more intense, not so pastel, more like you really scrubbed every last piece of bacteria from your skin with a cleaner kind of soap. So that's White Linen. So my overall take, I would say, just for me, the most kind of me fragrance that I would potentially wear is Private Collection, because it does smell a bit like synthetic jungle, and it doesn't go overly vintage in the base. The most kind of interesting to me is Azure, just because it's such a complex perfume with the spices, the green, just the interplay of notes is really interesting, very big and aromatic. The least favorite would be White Linen. And then Knowing is it's a well done in that kind of soapy French style, but it's a little bit of a boring genre to me. And I liked Estée. Oh, sorry, Estée. See, I'm getting the names mixed up. Estée is the soapy one. And then Knowing, I enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it again a lot more on paper, but on skin it went a little too spicy, mossy, vintage smelling. And herein lies, I think, the problem, which is that fans of these seem pretty pissed off by this reworking. So they're probably not going to buy it unless they give in and they try it and they kind of get over their bias towards the previous perfume and accept them for what they are. There might be some people who make the transition into the newer versions, and happily so. But I think people like me who are fans of Frederic Malle, and that's largely why I bothered to check these out, they're still too vintage smelling. They're, like I said, they smell very modern in execution and the precision. They smell very fresh. Obviously, they're just made. They're not from a 20-year-old bottle, but they have that like clarity and vibrancy that is really lovely. But ultimately, the style is still too vintage that I don't think I would wear any of these. And it's too expensive to buy one just to have a representative of that genre. Now, along those lines, I will say, having purchased these, I'm getting the Estée Lauder emails, and they're one of those companies that tends to throw you coupons and free gifts and things like that all the time. So if you are interested in a bottle, I would sign up for emails. I think recently I got one that was 25% off, so I assume it could be used for these. Maybe they won't do well and they'll end up on discount. I'm not sure. Definitely worth getting the Discovery set if this sounds interesting to you, though, because the Discovery set is really nicely priced. I think it could almost be a good crash course for someone in like the large vintage styles, because we have a nice representative of each. But overall, I think it's an interesting concept. I like the concept and I like the execution, but I think they're just still not really for me. Anyway, very curious to hear what people think if they have tried the originals. Let me know down below. I'll try to, if I ever come across them at a counter, it'd be really interesting to kind of smell them in reverse, knowing these first and seeing how I feel about those. So that's all for now. Bye.